This girl was held captive for 8 years until one day her kidnapper got distracted by a call. The 10-year-old notices something unusual on the route, however, a white van up ahead with a man standing next to it. Then, as she tries to walk past the stranger, the man grabs her and throws her into his vehicle. It's just the start of what would prove to be a harrowing 8-year ordeal for the young girl. Natascha Maria Kampusch was born on February 17, 1988, to Brigitta Czerny and Ludwig Koch. Natascha's parents ended their relationship when the daughter was young, however, and the two subsequently shared the little girl's care. And whether Natascha's childhood was happy or not has been a subject of some debate. It's been reported, though, that Czerny and Koch often argued. And when Koch dropped Natascha off at her mother's the evening before the kidnap, Czerny was furious with him as he was late. In anger, Czerny told Natascha that she could never see her father again. The 10-year-old was so annoyed by her mother's ruling, though, that when she left the house the next morning to go to school, she didn't bid Czerny farewell. Writing in her 2010 autobiography, 3,096 Days, Natascha recalled, "At the front door of my flat, I hesitated, thinking of what she'd told me a dozen times before. You should never part in anger. You never know if we'll ever see each other again. Even so, I left without giving my mother a kiss. What could happen anyway?" I mumbled to myself. That very morning, however, Natascha was abducted, and it would be 8 long years before she'd see her mother again. The man who took her off the street and tossed her into his van was Wolfgang Priklopil. He was born in Vienna in 1962, although he was of Czech heritage. Priklopil was the only child of Karl and Waltraud, who had worked by selling cognac and shoes, respectively. Meanwhile, Priklopil himself had been a communications technician at German multinational Siemens AG for a period, and as far as we know, the man had no criminal background prior to kidnapping Natascha. Priklopil's personality remains somewhat of an enigma too, even in some respects to his mother. Indeed, in 2008, Frau Priklopil was quoted in the Daily Telegraph as saying, "The only thing I know is that I really didn't know anything about my son. Like all other people, I find it disgusting what Wolfgang did." Thanks to Natascha's memoir of her time in captivity, though, we do, however, know plenty about his treatment of the young girl. In 3,096 Days, Natascha recounts the moment she was seized, for instance. There she wrote, "The kidnapper had an easy time of it. He was about 5'6" tall, I was only 4'9". Plus my heavy school bag hindered my mobility. The whole thing had taken just a few seconds." And now, locked in the back of Priklopil's van, Natascha knew only too well that she'd been kidnapped. Terrifyingly, at the time there had been 2 recent abductions of schoolgirls, both of which had ended in brutal murders. Natascha feared, therefore, that she would be the next to die. But in fact, Priklopil had other ideas about Natascha's future. He had an underground chamber beneath his garage, and that was where he put her when they arrived at his home. The subterranean room's entrance was carefully obscured by a cupboard, and the door to the area itself was constructed from concrete and steel. In her book, Natascha remembered her introduction to the room. There she wrote, "I was on a cold floor in total darkness. The room smelled of dust and the stale air was strangely warm. I rolled myself into a ball and whimpered softly. The space she was now in was windowless, soundproofed, and measured just 54 square feet." Natascha further described the cell's furnishings, saying, "The walls were covered with wood paneling. A pallet bed was fixed to the wall on hooks. A toilet with no lid stood in the corner, and there was a double stainless steel sink along one wall." For the initial half a year of captivity under his nondescript suburban house, Priklopil did not allow his prisoner out of the room once. Then Natascha was sometimes allowed into Priklopil's house upstairs, although he locked her in the cellar every night. Later in her ordeal, however, it seems that Priklopil gradually allowed her more freedom. One neighbor would state that he'd seen Natascha in the garden unaccompanied. He'd also apparently witnessed her being driven by Priklopil in his car. But if Priklopil permitted Natascha more freedom in her later years of captivity, why didn't she escape? Well, that may have been due to the phenomenon known as Stockholm Syndrome. This is a well-attested condition where prisoners or hostages form a bond with their captors as a survival tactic. However, in a 2010 interview with The Guardian, Natascha rejected the notion that she had Stockholm Syndrome. Instead, she claimed she had her own way of understanding the strange relationship that had developed between her and Priklopil. Even if Priklopil did not let Natascha out from time to time, though, he was undoubtedly controlling. Some 18 months after Priklopil had abducted the girl, for instance, he told her, "You're no longer Natascha, now you belong to me." Natascha was also commanded to take a new name, so she chose Bibiane, a moniker which she said in her book that she'd seen in a saint's calendar. And then there were the beatings. Natascha explained in 3096 Days, "I'd scrub and polish the orange and brown tiles in Priklopil's kitchen, but they were never clean enough. Without warning, I'd suddenly be kicked in the side or in the shin, and again until everything shone." Disturbingly, Priklopil also spoke of his approval of Hitler and the Nazis' treatment of Jews. Furthermore, after Natascha turned 14, Priklopil began to force her to sleep with him. Apparently, though, this wasn't a sexual move on the captor's part. "The man who'd beat me and locked me in the cellar had something else in mind. He simply wanted something to cuddle," Natascha later wrote. Then, on August 23, 2003, Natascha's chance to escape came. On that day, she was outside cleaning Priklopil's car under his supervision. After his cell phone rang, however, he moved away to take the call. And with that, Natascha ran, fleeing across gardens until she came to a nearby house, where a local woman would call the police. Likely realizing that law enforcement would be hunting him, the same day Priklopil lay on a railway track and was decapitated. But after Natascha had gained her freedom, she became the center of a tremendous amount of attention. Various people even came out of the woodwork to promote conspiracy theories about Priklopil's death and the possible involvement of Natascha's mother in the kidnapping, and even about Natascha's own complicity in her nightmare experience. In 2013, an Australian government report poured cold water on such assertions, however. Yet even though her ordeal is over, Natascha still returns to the Austrian home where she was once detained. That makes sense to her, though, as according to a 2017 report by the Daily Mirror, she said, "The house itself cannot hurt me. Only the memories of what happened here can. Bricks and mortar are not evil." Check out these other videos from Let Me Know. If you haven't made the move to subscribe to our channel, all you need to do is click on that red subscribe button. Thank you for watching.